Hey everyone, hope you're doing great. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we'll dive into what if Deku hacked Heroes Society from the shadows. Smash that subscribe button, and be sure to peek at the description below. Let's begin. The rain wasn't helping. It fell in a miserable, sheeting drizzle that slicked the asphalt of Musitafu's financial district and blurred the neon signs into watercolor blotches. For pro-hero Shota Aizawa, known in the shadows as Eraserhead, the rain was just another tactical nuisance. It made his capture weapon heavy, his footing less sure, and the already tense air thick with the smell of wet concrete and ozone. He crouched on the rooftop opposite the Ketsueki Data Solutions building, a sleek monolith of glass and steel that was currently the epicenter of the city's attention. Red and blue lights painted frantic, silent strobes across its dark facade, reflecting off the helmets of the police barricade below. Inside, on the 47th floor, 3 villains held 12 hostages. And for the last 93 minutes, nothing had changed. Status update, Eraserhead? The voice of Detective Naomi Satsukachi crackled in his ear, tinny and strained. Aizawa didn't move, his gaze fixed on the tinted windows of the target floor. Status is the same, Detective. Stalemate. The families are getting restless. The press is having a field day. The Hero Commission is breathing down my neck for a resolution. They're talking about sending an Endeavor. A low growl rumbled in Aizawa's chest. Send an Endeavor and you'll lose half the building and all the hostages. The leader, Gavel, has a kinetic amplification quirk. He taps an object, and any force applied to it is multiplied tenfold. The other two are a bigger problem. We have Razor, a low-level thug with dermal blades, and Static. Static is our primary obstacle. The electromagnetic disruption quirk. Tsukachi confirmed grimly. He's turned the entire 47th floor into a dead zone. Aizawa elaborated, his voice a low monotone that belied the razor-sharp analysis running through his mind. No comms, no camera feeds, no drones. He's running a constant, low-level EMP that fries anything more complex than a flashlight. We can't get eyes inside, and we can't coordinate an entry. Gavel has the hostages clustered in the central server room, which has only one magnetic lock door. If we try a brute force entry, he'll have more than enough time to react. He didn't need to finish the sentence. A tap on the floor could send a shockwave through the room powerful enough to turn bone to powder. A tap on a hostage, it didn't bear thinking about. They were completely blind, deaf, and paralyzed by a C-rank villain with a niche but perfectly suited quirk. It was illogical and infuriating. The heroes on the scene, a mix of flashy daytime pros who were useless in a stealth situation and more grounded types like himself, were left standing around like statues. Any progress on cutting the building's power? Tsukachi asked, a hint of desperation in his voice. Negative. The building has 3 independent, shielded power redundancies in the sub-basement. We can't get to them without the villains knowing. And even if we could, the mag lock on the server room door is fail-secure. It will remain locked without power. It was a perfect cage, designed by a paranoid data security firm and now being used by a trio of opportunistic criminals. The demands were standard, 10 million yen and a clear escape route. The execution, however, was anything but. Aizawa scanned the perimeter again, his eyes missing nothing. The wind whipped his black hair across his face, and he impatiently pushed it back. This was the part of hero work the public never saw. Not the flashy rescues or the triumphant punches, but the long, cold, frustrating waiting. The gnawing feeling of helplessness as the clock ticked down. The system was failing. Their power, their fame, their technology, all of it was being held at bay by a single man who could scramble a Wi-Fi signal. He was about to give another useless report when it happened. It started not with a bang, but with a flicker. The lights on the 47th floor, a solid band of fluorescent white against the night sky, blinked once. Twice. Then, with a soft, collective hum that Aizawa could feel more than hear, they died. The entire floor was plunged into absolute, impenetrable blackness. A collective gasp went through the police line below. In his earpiece, Tsukachi was barking questions. What was that? Aizawa, report. Did we cut the power? Negative. Aizawa said, his body instantly coiling, every muscle taut and ready. This wasn't us. Before anyone could process the blackout, the second event occurred. A faint, almost imperceptible mist began to cloud the inside of the windows. Then red lights, the emergency fire strobes, began to flash, silent and ominous. The sprinkler system, Aizawa realized, his mind racing. But that's on a separate, isolated circuit. It shouldn't be affected by a power outage. And Static's EMP should have. That's when his personal burner phone, a cheap, untraceable flip phone he kept for sensitive intel, vibrated in his pocket. He never gave the number out. Only a handful of people had it, and none of them were on this operation. He flipped it open. A single, encrypted text message. His thumb moved quickly over the buttons, his eyes widening slightly as he read. Eraserhead. Target's blind wet. Static's EMP neutralized by water saturation. Focus on his head/torso to prevent restart. Gavel is in central server room. Maglock is now disengaged. 12 hostages, NW corner. Razor is patrolling hallway. Acute auditory sensitivity. Use silence. Full building schematics, villain psych profiles attached. You have 90 seconds. Attached were 2 heavily encrypted files. It was impossible. No one could have gathered this intel, let alone gotten it to him. Hacking through an active EMP field, overriding multiple independent systems in a high-security building, and sending it all to a ghost phone number? This wasn't the work of a hero agency or the police. This was something else. He didn't have time to question it. 90 seconds. All units, hold your positions. He spoke into his official comm, his voice calm and authoritative. I'm going in. He didn't wait for a reply. He launched his capture weapon, the carbon fiber alloy wrapping around the flagpole on the Ketswaki building. With the grace of a phantom, he swung across the rain-swept chasm, landing silently on a window-washing platform 2 floors below his target. He scaled the remaining distance in seconds, his grip sure on the metal framework. He used the glass cutter to create a silent entry point, slipping through into the pitch-black corridor. The air was cold, thick with the spray from the overhead sprinklers. The only light came from the rhythmic, crimson pulse of the emergency strobes, creating a disorienting stop-motion effect. A low, panicked murmur came from the direction of the server room. Just as the message had said, he heard the faint, squelching footsteps of Razor patrolling the hall. The man was practically invisible in the dark, but the sound was enough. Aizawa moved like a wraith, his own footsteps completely silent on the drenched carpet. He came up behind the villain, a shadow detaching from other shadows. Razor sensed something at the last second, his bladed hands whipping around. He was too slow. Aizawa's eyes flared red, his hair levitating as he activated his quirk. The faint shimmer on Razor's skin vanished. In the same motion, the capture weapon lashed out, wrapping around the man's torso, neck, and limbs, binding him into a helpless, sodden cocoon. A quick, precise chop to the back of the neck, and Razor slumped to the ground, unconscious. One down. He moved toward the server room. The heavy steel door was slightly ajar, just as the intel promised. The magnetic lock, now powerless and disengaged, had been defeated. Inside, he could hear the panicked shouting of the lead villain, Gavel. Static, what the hell is going on? Get the lights back on. Get the comms up, a frantic, sputtering voice replied. I can't. The water, it's shorting out everything, including me. I can't focus my energy. Aizawa peered through the gap. In the strobing red light, the scene was chaos. Hostages were huddled in the corner, crying softly. Gavel stood in the center of the room, his hands glowing with latent power, his head whipping back and forth in paranoia. Static was frantically trying to wipe water from his face and chest, sparks sputtering weakly from his fingertips before dying. This was his only chance. He kicked the door open and launched himself inside. Gavel spun around, his eyes wide with shock. Aizawa's gaze locked onto him, and the glow around the villain's hands died. Erasure. But Static was still a threat. Aizawa's eyes darted to him for a split second, erasing his quirk too, before snapping back to Gavel, the primary danger. It was a technique he'd perfected, a rapid blink-like flicker of his quirk between multiple targets. Gavel, realizing his power was gone, roared and charged, relying on pure muscle. Aizawa sidestepped, using the man's momentum against him, his capture weapon a living thing in his hands. It snaked around Gavel's ankle, pulling him off balance. As the villain stumbled, Aizawa delivered a series of precise, debilitating strikes to his joints. Meanwhile, Static saw his opening. The moment Aizawa's gaze left him to focus on Gavel, he tried to power up again. But the anonymous tip had been explicit: focus on his head/torso. Before the villain could generate more than a fizz of energy, a secondary length of the capture weapon shot out, wrapping around his head and slamming him face first into a server rack. He went down hard. The fight was over in less than 10 seconds. 2 villains down, 1 neutralized. The hostages were safe. Aizawa stood in the center of the room, his breath misting in the cold, damp air. His heart was pounding, not just from the exertion, but from the sheer impossibility of it all. He had been a tool, a perfectly aimed, ruthlessly efficient weapon, guided by an unseen hand. He pulled out his burner phone again. The message was still there. The files were already decrypting. He opened the first, a complete, multi-layered schematic of the building, from the HVAC systems to the server architecture. The second contained meticulously detailed profiles on Gavel, Razor, and Static, their known associates, their previous crimes, and most chillingly, a full psychological workup that predicted their exact reactions to a sudden loss of control. Who had this information? And why give it to him? Later, as the police flooded the floor and the relieved hostages were escorted out, the official story began to form. A freak power surge had tripped the breakers and, in a one-in-a-million coincidence, triggered a fault in the fire suppression system. The heroes, led by the quick-thinking Eraserhead, had capitalized on the lucky break. Aizawa leaned against the wall, away from the reporters and the flashing cameras, and allowed himself a small, grim smile. Lucky break. Illogical. He had a new problem now. And it wasn't a villain. It was a ghost. A ghost in the machine. He made a mental note. This informant, whoever they were, needed a code name. Based on the almost prophetic nature of the intel, one name came to mind: Oracle. 20 blocks away, in a quiet, unassuming apartment complex, the glow of 6 monitors cast the only light in a small, soundproofed room. The air was cool, humming with the whir of custom-built computer fans and smelling faintly of ozone and day-old coffee. Wires snaked across the floor like thick black vines, connecting servers, backup power supplies, and a dizzying array of modified hardware. In the center of this digital nest sat a boy. He couldn't have been older than 16, with a wiry frame lost in a black hoodie. A mop of untamable, dark green hair shadowed his face, which was illuminated by the scrolling lines of code on the main screen. His eyes, a sharp, intelligent green, scanned the data streams with an intensity that bordered on obsessive. This was Izuka Midoriya. Or more accurately, this was what Izuka Midoriya had become. On one monitor, a news feed showed a reporter standing in the rain, breathlessly recounting the miraculous end to the Katsueki hostage crisis. Izuka's expression didn't change. His fingers moved with silent precision across a keyboard, the clicks so soft they were barely audible. He brought up a new window, a custom-designed interface that looked like something out of a spy thriller. A digital file was open, titled Case 047, Katsueki Data Solutions Hostage Crisis. He typed a final line in the summary field: Resolution, successful. Asset Eraserhead, deployed effectively. 12 civilian lives saved. Media narrative, faulty wiring. Case closed. With a final, decisive click, he moved the file into a heavily encrypted folder labeled Resolved. There were 46 other files in there, each one a crisis averted, a crime solved, a life saved. A human trafficking ring dismantled by guiding a new hero, Empty Lady, to the right place at the right time for maximum media exposure, preventing a corporate cover-up. A bomb plot thwarted by anonymously feeding the location to the police bomb squad 30 minutes before detonation. A string of muggings stopped by analyzing attack patterns and leaking the villain's next location to a local pro. He was a hero. Just not the kind he had ever dreamed of being. His gaze drifted to a shelf in the corner of the room, where a single, scorched notebook lay. Hero Analysis for the Future, number 13. It felt like a relic from another lifetime. A lifetime of bright-eyed optimism, of foolish, desperate dreams. He had long since moved past such childish things. His new notebooks were digital, and they were far more powerful. He minimized the case file window, revealing his desktop. It was covered in icons, each a gateway to a different part of his new world. There was database_hero, an evolution of his old analysis. It contained everything the public knew, and everything they didn't. Endeavor's public approval ratings were cross-referenced with stock prices of companies his agency secretly owned. All Might's fight records were meticulously charted, showing a clear, if slight, statistical decline in the duration of his hero activities over the last year. Eraserhead's file was flagged with a green marker for reliable asset, and no incorruptible. Then there was database_villain, a sprawling, interconnected web of criminal activity, from low-level purse snatchers to whispers of powerful underworld figures that the heroes seemed completely unaware of. The most dangerous folder was simply labeled database_society. It contained files on corrupt politicians, corporate executives with illegal side businesses, and even a few high-ranking members of the Hero Public Safety Commission. It was a map of the rot, the systemic decay he saw festering just beneath the surface of their bright, hero-worshipping world. This was his new analysis. Not for a future where he could be a hero, but for a present where he was the only one doing what was necessary. The heroes were players in a game, bound by rules, public image, and bureaucracy. He was the one who hacked the game itself. A sudden, sharp memory pierced through his concentration, triggered by the lingering thought of All Might's name in his database. The image of the setting sun, the wind on a rooftop, the taste of ash in his mouth. Flashback. The air was thin and cold, a stark contrast to the warmth of the hope that had been burning in his chest just moments before. He stood on the gravelly rooftop, a scrawny, quirkless 14-year-old, his world collapsing around him. In front of him, the skeletal form of Toshinori Yagi, the man who was All Might, looked at him with something like pity. "It's not bad to dream, kid," the hero had said, his voice raspy. "But you need to be realistic." Each word was a physical blow. The number one hero, his idol, the symbol of everything he had ever wanted to be, had looked him in the eyes and confirmed his deepest, darkest fear. You can't. The sludge villain incident hadn't happened for him. After All Might had left him on that roof, Izuka had stumbled home in a daze, the hero's words echoing in his skull, a funeral dirge for his dreams. There was no desperate, heroic rush to save Kaken. There was only the hollow, aching void where his future used to be. He had spent a week in that void. He sat in his room, staring at his All Might posters, the cheerful, triumphant smile feeling like a cruel mockery. He reread his notebooks, his years of frantic, desperate analysis, and saw them for what they were, the pathetic scribbles of a child playing make-believe. On the 8th day, something shifted. The grief, the soul-crushing despair, didn't vanish. It crystallized. It hardened into something cold, sharp, and analytical. He was sitting at his desk, staring at the burnt, water-damaged pages of his 13th notebook, the one All Might had signed and then almost let drop. "You need to be realistic," the phrase replayed in his mind, but this time, it sounded different. It wasn't just a dismissal. It was a statement of fact about the world they lived in, and Izuka Midoriya, for all his faults, was an analyst. He dealt in facts. Fact, the current hero system prioritizes individuals with powerful, flashy quirks. Fact, public perception and media narratives are as important as actual life-saving. Fact, bureaucracy and regulations often hinder heroes from acting with maximum efficiency. Fact, he, Izuka Midoriya, was quirkless. He could not participate in this system as a player. His tears had stopped. His breathing evened out. A new thought, cold and clear as ice, formed in his mind. If you can't win the game, change the rules. No, that wasn't right. The rules were too entrenched. The players were too powerful. If you can't change the rules, hack the game board. He looked at his computer, a decent but unremarkable desktop machine his mother had bought him. It was a tool. His brain, the one that could dissect a hero's fighting style from a grainy 10-second video clip, the one that could predict a villain's next move based on psychological tics, was also a tool. He had the most powerful weapon in the world, information. He just hadn't been using it correctly. Heroes fought with fists and fire and ice. They were the frontline soldiers. But every army needs an intelligence operative. A strategist. A ghost in the machine who could see the whole battlefield, move the pieces, and ensure victory before the first punch was even thrown. He didn't need a quirk to do that. He needed a faster processor. He needed a better encryption algorithm. He needed access. That night, the All Might posters came down. In their place, he tacked up soundproofing foam and cheap egg cartons. He used his life savings, meant for hero merch, to buy a second-hand server and a stack of programming manuals. His obsessive energy, once poured into analyzing heroes, was now channeled into learning C, Python, network security, and cryptography. He devoured information, sleeping only 3 or 4 hours a night, his mind on fire with a new, colder purpose. He started small. Hacking into public traffic cameras to get a better angle on hero fights. Then he breached a police database, just to see if he could. He could. He learned to cover his tracks, to bounce his signal through a dozen different countries, to become a digital phantom. His first save was 6 months later. He found evidence of an illegal quirk-enhancing drug deal going down, and anonymously tipped off the police. It felt good. It was a quiet, clinical satisfaction, a problem solved. It wasn't the explosive joy he had imagined as a child, but it was real. He was no longer Deku, the useless boy who couldn't do anything. He was Oracle. And Oracle could do anything. And flashback. A soft knock on his bedroom door jolted him back to the present. Izuku? Honey, dinner's ready. I made your favorite, Katsudan. The voice of his mother, Inko Midoriya, was a warm, gentle wave washing against the cold, hard shore of his secret life. For a moment, the two worlds collided in his head. The man who had just manipulated a high-stakes hostage situation from the shadows, and the boy whose mom made him pork cutlet bowls. He took a deep breath, deliberately letting the tension drain from his shoulders. The focused, predatory intensity in his eyes softened, replaced by a practiced, placid mildness. He pushed his chair back, the movement carefully calibrated to sound like a teenager shifting after a long study session. "Coming, Mom!" he called out, his voice a pitch higher, softer. The voice of her Izuku. He ran a quick shutdown sequence on his secondary systems, leaving only the passive surveillance programs running. He locked his main terminal with a 256-character alphanumeric password that would take a supercomputer a millennium to brute force. He stood up, stretched, and pulled the black hoodie off, revealing a plain t-shirt underneath. He looked at his reflection in one of the dark monitors. For a second, he saw Oracle, the pale, intense face, the knowing, weary eyes. Then he blinked, and it was just Izuku, a slightly tired, skinny high school student with messy hair and freckles. A mask he wore more often than his own face. He opened the door to his room, the warm light of the hallway spilling in, smelling of rice and fried pork. His mother was there, smiling, a smudge of flour on her cheek. "You've been cooped up in there all day," she said, her brow furrowed with gentle concern. "Is it for that online programming course you signed up for? You mustn't push yourself too hard." He had told her he was taking advanced computer science classes online to prepare for a career in tech support. It was a plausible lie, one that explained the long hours and the new equipment. She was just happy he'd found a passion after he'd given up on the hero dream. "It was fine, Mom. Just finished a big project," he said, giving her a small, genuine smile. This smile was real. It was for her. She was the one person in the world he was unequivocally protecting. The thought of what would happen to her if he was ever discovered was the one fear that could still pierce his cold, analytical armor. "Well, come and eat while it's hot," she urged, bustling back toward the small dining table. "You need to keep your strength up." He followed her, stepping out of the darkness and into the light. He sat down at the table, the steam from the katsudan warming his face. He picked up his chopsticks, the familiar weight a comforting anchor to this normal, peaceful life. "Itadakimasu," he murmured, as he ate, listening to his mother chatter about her day. His mind was a world away. In the back of his consciousness, a silent algorithm was still running, cross-referencing the events of the hostage crisis with data on other electromagnetism-based quirks, searching for patterns, for weaknesses, for the next thread to pull. He had saved 12 people tonight. He had outsmarted a team of professional heroes and a squad of villains. He had held lives in his hands and hadn't faltered. And now, he was eating katsudon at his mother's table. This was his life. A hero in the shadows, a sun in the light. A ghost in the machine, and a boy in a quiet apartment. He wouldn't have it any other way. The game was flawed, the society was corrupt, but he would fix it. One keystroke at a time. He would be the hero they needed, whether they knew it or not. He took another bite of pork, the savory taste a grounding reminder of the world he fought to protect. The world that could never know he existed. The satisfaction from the Ketsueki incident was a fleeting, sterile thing. It was the feeling a mathematician gets from solving a complex proof, not the warmth a hero feels from a grateful smile. For Izuku Midoriya, operating under the digital shroud of Oracle, emotion was a liability. It was messy, unpredictable data that could corrupt the logic of an operation. So, he logged the success, cataloged the data, and moved on. The machine he had built around himself demanded it. The work was never done. His new existence was a rhythm of shadows and light. By day, he was the quiet, unremarkable son, helping his mother with groceries, doing his online coursework with feigned diligence, and offering nervous, mumbled greetings to neighbors. But when night fell and Inko's gentle snores were the only sound in the apartment, the door to his room would click shut, and Izuku Midoriya would cease to be. In his place, Oracle would awaken, a being of pure data and purpose, his consciousness spread across a dozen servers and 1,000 lines of code. The Ketsueki crisis had been a reaction. He had stumbled upon the situation already in progress, and provided a solution. It was effective, but it was reactive. To truly fix the broken system, to excise the rot, he couldn't just be a fireman. He had to become a surgeon. He had to choose his own targets. For 3 days he did nothing but hunt. This wasn't a simple search. It was a deep, invasive dive into the dark corners of the web where criminals traded secrets. He wove his way through encrypted forums, back-alley data brokers, and black market chat rooms, his digital presence a ghost among ghosts. He was looking for a thread, a single, loose thread that, when pulled, would unravel something monstrous. He found it in a whisper. A single, garbled message on a defunct server for a fallen villain group, missed by police data sweeps. The message spoke of perishable cargo that didn't spoil, and a shipping company that guaranteed no questions asked. The company name was heavily encoded, but for Oracle, the code was a flimsy paper door. Nautilus Freight. The name was innocuous. Publicly, Nautilus was a mid-tier logistics and shipping company, known for its garish blue and gold trucks and its slightly too chipper motto, delivering your world, securely. They had a clean record, a handful of government contracts for non-sensitive materials, and a CEO, Kenji Tsurigami, who was a minor celebrity in the business world for his philanthropic donations to hero charities. But Izuku's analysis went deeper than public records. He cross-referenced the company's shipping routes with a national database of missing persons reports he'd acquired. A pattern emerged, a chilling, statistically significant correlation. Along Nautilus's most profitable routes, from smaller, economically depressed towns to major port cities, the number of missing young people with minor or inconvenient quirks spiked within 48 hours of a Nautilus truck passing through. The authorities hadn't seen it. The disappearances were scattered across a dozen different prefectures, each one a separate, low-priority case file in a different local police department. There was no central body connecting the dots. The heroes were too busy stopping bank robberies and giant monsters to look for patterns in paperwork. But Oracle saw. Oracle connected the dots. He spent the next 24 hours inside Nautilus Freight's digital infrastructure. Breaching their initial firewalls was trivial. They were more concerned with protecting their client lists than their internal logistics. Getting into the core server, however, was a different challenge. It was air-gapped, physically disconnected from the main network. But Izuku had learned that there is no such thing as a truly secure system. There is always a human element. He found his key in the form of a disgruntled IT technician named Hiroki. Through social engineering, piecing together a digital life from social media posts, forum comments, and a few minor data breaches, Izuku built a complete profile of Hiroki. He loved vintage hero merchandise, hated his boss, and had a weakness for a specific brand of expensive ramen. He also had a high-level access keycard and a habit of using the same lazy password for his personal and work accounts. It was a symphony of vulnerabilities. Posing as a fellow collector on a vintage hero forum, Izuku engaged Hiroki in conversation. He dangled the prospect of a rare, mint-condition Silver Age All Might figurine. In his excitement, Hiroki clicked a link to a private auction site that Izuku had crafted. The moment he did, a keylogger piggybacked onto his device. Izuku had his password. That night, when Hiroki remotely logged in to perform routine maintenance, a violation of company policy, but one he committed regularly, Izuku was right behind him, a shadow slipping through the briefly open door into the heart of the system. The data he found made his stomach churn. The perishable cargo was human. The company was the logistical backbone of a massive human trafficking ring, specializing in individuals with quirks that were valuable on the black market, minor regeneration for organ harvesting, specific elemental resistances for forced labor in hazardous environments, unique physical traits for the grotesque whims of the wealthy. The next major shipment was in 2 days. A refrigerated truck, officially logged as carrying rare orchids, was scheduled to pick up cargo from a nondescript warehouse in the rural outskirts of the Shizuoka prefecture, and transport it to a cargo ship waiting at the Yokohama port. The manifest listed 6 units, 6 human beings. A part of Izuku, the small, terrified boy who still lived somewhere deep inside him, was screaming. The cold, analytical mind of Oracle, however, saw only the parameters of the problem. He couldn't just send an anonymous tip. Nautilus Freight was owned by a parent corporation, Hachiman Industries, a corporate behemoth with lawyers that could make murder charges disappear and a board of directors that included 2 retired, high-ranking officials from the Hero Public Safety Commission. If the police simply raided the truck, Hachiman would squash it. They'd sacrifice the drivers, claim they were rogue employees, and the operation would simply go dark for a few months before reappearing under a new name. No. This couldn't be a quiet arrest. It had to be a public spectacle. It had to be so loud, so undeniable, that no amount of money or influence could cover it up. He needed to control the narrative. His plan began to form, a complex, multi-layered strategy. He wouldn't just expose them. He would set the stage, choose the actors, and write the script for their downfall. Phase 1 Reroute. He delved back into Nautilus's logistics system. He couldn't just change the destination address. That would trigger immediate alarms. He had to create a legitimate, unavoidable reason for the change. He fabricated a crisis. He hacked the Yokohama Port Authority's public maintenance schedule, inserting a last-minute, high-priority structural integrity failure at the specific pier the Nautilus truck was destined for. He created official-looking work orders, safety warnings, and even a fake press release for local maritime news outlets. To the Nautilus system, it would appear their destination was suddenly and unexpectedly unavailable. Next, he created the new destination. He needed a place that was isolated, easily contained, and within a plausible detour route. His digital fingers flew across the country, scanning satellite maps and public records. He found it, a defunct food processing plant on the industrial outskirts of Mizurufu. It had been abandoned for 5 years, had a single entry road, and was surrounded by a high concrete wall. Perfect. Now, to make the system choose it. He hacked Nautilus's contingency routing software. The program was designed to automatically find the nearest secure holding facility in case of a route emergency. Izuku subtly altered its parameters, boosting the security rating of the abandoned plant and flagging all other nearby facilities with phantom biohazard or structural warnings. When the driver's terminal registered the Yokohama pier closure, the system would automatically and logically redirect them to his chosen kill box. Phase 2, the players. With the stage set, he needed his actors. The choice was critical. He needed a specific combination of skills and public profiles. His first choice was obvious. Eraserhead. Aizawa was ruthlessly efficient, valued results over glory, and was already aware of an unknown informant. Sending the tip to him would reinforce the Oracle persona and ensure the tactical side of the operation was handled with brutal precision. Izuku respected Aizawa's logic, his refusal to play the media game. He was a reliable tool. But Aizawa wasn't enough. An underground hero making an arrest at an abandoned factory could still be buried. He needed noise. He needed cameras. He needed a hero who drew the spotlight like a moth to a flame. His search algorithm churned through hero agency databases, cross-referencing public approval ratings, media mentions, and patrol schedules. The answer was almost comically perfect. Lady Yu Takayama was the definition of a modern celebrity hero. Her gigantification quirk was visually spectacular, and she knew how to play to a crowd. She was vain, glory-seeking, and more concerned with her camera angles than collateral damage. Izuku felt a flicker of contempt for her style of heroism, but Oracle saw her value. Where Empty Lady went, the media followed. Her presence would guarantee that the raid wouldn't be a quiet affair. It would be the lead story on the evening news. Hachiman Industries couldn't bribe the entire Japanese media, not when they had dramatic, high-definition footage of a beloved hero uncovering a human trafficking operation. The two heroes were a perfect, if antithetical, combination. Eraserhead for the silent takedown, Empty Lady for the deafening fallout. Phase 3, the leak. He drafted 2 separate messages, each tailored to its recipient. The one for Empty Lady's agency was designed to appeal to her vanity and ambition. He sent it from a disposable, encrypted email address to her agency's public tip line, knowing their filters would flag it. 2. Empty Lady Agency. Subject: career-making takedown. A major villain operation is using the old Muzutafu canning factory as a transfer point. Human trafficking. High-profile bust. Truck arrives tomorrow, approximate 1930. Be the first on the scene, be the one to break the story. The press will love you for it. Don't share this. The glory should be all yours. Coordinates attached. It was bait, simple and direct. It played to her ego, offering her an exclusive, heroic moment gift wrapped for media consumption. The message for Aizawa was different. It was clinical, tactical, and sent to the same untraceable burner phone as before. Eraserhead. Target: human trafficking ring. Nautilus freight front. Location: abandoned Muzutafu canning factory. Coordinates attached. ETA tomorrow, 1930. 1 truck for guards. Lightly armed, standard firearms. No significant quirks. Method: I have rerouted their shipment to this location. They will be disoriented and unprepared. Note: Empty Lady has also been tipped off. She will serve as the primary distraction and media magnet. Your objective is clean up and capture. Secure the cargo. They are human. They will not be expecting you. Oh, he signed this one with a single letter. A signature for his phantom. Oracle. With the messages sent, the trap was set. All the pieces were in place. Now, all he could do was watch. He slaved his system to every traffic camera, every satellite feed, every scrap of digital information in a 20-mile radius of the factory. His monitors became a mosaic of gray asphalt, darkened windows, and the slow crawl of evening traffic. He felt a strange, hollow calm. He had manipulated corporate logistics, a port authority, and 2 professional heroes. He was about to orchestrate a violent confrontation that would shatter a criminal empire. And he was doing it all from his bedroom, the scent of his mother's fabric softener clinging to the hoodie he wore. The dissonance was a chasm, and he was living in its depths. Yu Takayama looked at the email on her tablet for the 10th time, a perfectly manicured nail tapping on the screen. Career-making takedown. The subject line was arrogant, almost insulting in its directness. Her agency's support staff had flagged it as probable spam or a prank from a rival hero's fan club. But something about it made her pause. It was specific. The location, the time, the nature of the crime. Pranksters were usually vague. And the tone, it knew her. It knew what motivated her. Glory. The spotlight. What do you think, Kamui? She asked, swiveling in her chair to face her frequent collaborator, Kamui Woods, who was meticulously polishing a splinter from his arm. He glanced at the screen. It's a trap, obviously. Or a waste of time. Human trafficking is serious business. If someone had a real tip, they'd go to the police, not a hero's fan mail inbox. Maybe they don't trust the police. She countered, a thoughtful frown creasing her brow. And if it is real, can you imagine the headlines? MT. Lady single-handedly smashes trafficking ring. My approval ratings would go through the roof. Kamui Wood sighed, a sound like rustling leaves. And if it's an ambush by villains who want to take down a high-profile hero, I'm not an idiot. I'll go in giant. They won't be able to miss me, and I'll be able to see any traps from a mile away, she said, her confidence returning. I'll do a quick flyby, so to speak. If it's a dud, I'm out of there. But if it's real, I can't afford to miss this. The lure of the spotlight was too strong. It was the fuel her career ran on. She made up her mind. It was a long shot, but the potential payoff was too massive to ignore. At the same time, in a small, stark office at UA High, Shota Aizawa stared at his flip phone. The O at the end of the message sent a chill down his spine that had nothing to do with the office's overzealous air conditioning. Oracle. It wasn't a one-off. This was a pattern. This entity was real, and it was escalating. The Ketsueki incident was a masterful piece of tactical support. This was orchestration. I have rerouted their shipment. The sheer audacity of it was staggering. This wasn't just an informant. This was an active, operational vigilante with a skill set he never encountered before. A hacker, a strategist, a puppeteer pulling the strings of heroes and villains alike. And the note about MT Lady, it was cynical, manipulative, and horrifyingly logical. Oracle wasn't just using him. It was using a fame-hungry hero as a media shield. It understood the system on a level that was deeply unsettling. He picked up his desk phone and dialed Sakachi. Aizawa. Something came up? The detective's tired voice answered. I've received another tip from my anonymous source, Aizawa said, his tone flat. Potential human trafficking operation. I'm heading to the location now. Old canning factory in the industrial sector. There was a pause. Your Oracle? Yes. This one feels different. More proactive. I think this is bigger than we thought. I want you to have a discreet police presence on standby, 2 blocks out. No sirens, no lights. Wait for my signal. Understood. Be careful, Shota. We have no idea who this person is or what their endgame is. Their endgame seems to be stopping criminals. Aizawa grunted. It's their methods that worry me. He hung up. He grabbed his capture weapon and his goggles. As he walked out into the hallway, he thought about the implications. Someone out there was playing a grand game of chess, using them all as pieces, and for now, they seemed to be on the same side. But for how long? He started a new file in his mind, a secure folder firewalled by his own professional paranoia. Case file, Oracle. It was time to start hunting the ghost. The rain had started again, a cold, persistent drizzle that matched the gray, decaying facade of the Musitifu canning factory. The place was a concrete corpse, its windows smashed like vacant eyes, graffiti scrawled across its walls like scars. MT Lady arrived first, just as Izuku predicted. She didn't bother with stealth. She activated her quirk a block away, growing to her full, towering height, her shadow falling over the entire compound. Her voice, amplified by her size, boomed through the night. This is the pro-hero MT Lady. Surrender now, and you might get a lighter sentence. It was loud, theatrical, and utterly useless as a tactical maneuver. But it was perfect for Izuku's plan. Several news helicopters, likely monitoring hero comms or tipped off by stringers who saw her sudden growth, were already buzzing in the distance. The spotlight was arriving. Inside a darkened building across the street, Aizawa watched, clenching his jaw in annoyance. Idiot, he muttered. But he couldn't deny the effectiveness of the distraction. Every eye, every gun, would be pointed at the giant woman shouting slogans. He saw them then. 4 figures bursting out of a side door of the factory, panicking. The Oracle's intel was perfect. They were lightly armed, carrying pistols, their faces masks of pure terror at the sight of a 20-meter-tall hero. The truck, a blue and gold Nautilus freight vehicle, was parked near a loading bay, its engines still running. While MT Lady soaked up their attention, Aizawa moved. He swung from the rooftop, a black specter against the rainy night sky, landing behind the parked truck without a sound. The guards were shouting at each other. What the hell is this? We were supposed to be at the port. Who cares? Just shoot at her. Give us some cover to get back to the truck. Before the first one could even raise his pistol, Aizawa's capture weapon lashed out of the darkness, wrapping around the man's gun hand and yanking him off his feet. The other three spun around, but it was too late. Aizawa was a blur of motion. His eyes flared red, negating the minor speed-enhancing quirk of one of the guards. A kick to a knee, an elbow to a jaw, the capture weapon binding and constricting. It was over in seconds. 4 unconscious bodies lay in the mud. Empty Lady, seeing the commotion below, finally seemed to realize she wasn't alone. Hey! Who's there? That was my bust! She boomed, taking a giant step forward. Aizawa ignored her, his focus entirely on the truck. He pulled open the heavy doors to the refrigerated trailer. The smell that hit him was not of orchids. It was the smell of sweat, fear, and unwashed bodies. Inside, huddled together for warmth in the chilling cold, were 6 people. Teenagers, mostly. They were thin, pale, and had collars around their necks, a faint green light glowing on each one, quirk-suppressing technology. They flinched at the sight of him, their eyes wide with terror. Aizawa's entire posture softened. The cold, efficient predator vanished, replaced by a protector. It's okay, he said, his voice unusually gentle. You're safe now. We're heroes. One of the girls, who couldn't have been more than 15, started to cry, a choked, silent sob of overwhelming relief. It was then that Empty Lady, having shrunk down to her normal size, came jogging over, followed moments later by the first wave of police cars, their sirens now screaming. The news helicopters were directly overhead, their spotlights cutting through the rain. What the? Empty Lady stared at the scene, the bound villains, Aizawa, the open truck. Then she saw the people inside. Her brash, media-hungry persona evaporated, replaced by genuine shock and horror. Oh my God! It was real! Aizawa met her gaze over the top of the truck. Yes, he said, his voice tight with cold fury. It was real! He looked at the unconscious guards, then at the truck, then up at the uncaring sky. The entire situation felt sterile. Manufactured. A perfect outcome delivered on a silver platter. Later, as Tsukachi's team processed the scene and paramedics tended to the rescued victims, the detective stood with Aizawa under a leaking awning. The media was in a frenzy, interviewing a visibly shaken but determined Empty Lady, who was, to her credit, giving a full, honest account of what she'd found. Oracle did this, Aizawa stated. It wasn't a question. Tsukachi nodded grimly, looking at the Nautilus Freight logo on the truck. This is going to be a firestorm. Nautilus is just the tip of the iceberg. Their parent company is Hachiman Industries. They have friends in very high places. If this had been a quiet bust, it would have been buried by morning. But it wasn't quiet, Aizawa said, a new understanding dawning. Oracle used her. They used her fame to make this too big to bury. They knew the commission and the corporate lawyers would try to cover it up. This person isn't just a hacker, Shota, Tsukachi said, his voice low. They're a strategist with a deep understanding of our society's weaknesses. Not just criminal weaknesses, but systemic ones. The media, corporate influence, the hero ranking system, they're exploiting all of it. He paused, looking out at the chaotic scene. Frankly, it's terrifying. They're a ghost puppeteer, and we don't even know why they're helping us. An officer approached them, holding an evidence bag. Detective, we found this on one of the perps. Looks like a custom comms unit. Aizawa took the bag. It was a shattered earpiece. Oracle must have been monitoring them. He looked up at the rooftops surrounding the factory. He was being watched. He was sure of it. Far away, in his darkened room, Izuku watched the last of the police cars leave the scene. On one monitor, he saw the CEO of Hachiman Industries giving an emergency press conference, denying all knowledge and promising a full internal investigation, the frantic damage control of a guilty man. On another, he saw the stock price of Hachiman Industries plummeting in after-hours trading. On a third, he saw the relieved faces of the victims' families as they were notified. He felt the cold, grim satisfaction settle over him again. Case 048, Nautilus Trafficking Ring. Resolution successful. 6 civilian lives saved. Criminal enterprise dismantled. corporate entity compromised. He typed the words with mechanical precision, his face illuminated by the glow of the screen. The operation had been a success. He had pulled the thread, and a monster had unraveled. But as he closed the file, he felt a pang of something he couldn't name. He had used Empty Lady's vanity and Aizawa's pragmatism like tools. He had treated human beings, heroes and victims alike, as variables in an equation. He glanced at his reflection in the dark monitor. The eyes staring back at him were cold, calculating, and tired. He was saving people. He was doing what no one else could, but he was becoming less of a person and more of a process. A ghost. The thought was a dangerous one, a piece of emotional data that could lead to hesitation. He purged it, pushing it down into the void where his old dreams lived. He had already chosen his next target. The whispers he'd heard while inside Nautilus's servers pointed to something else. Something within the hero system itself. A pattern of corruption and kickbacks that went surprisingly high. He opened a new blank file. The cursor blinked, waiting. The work was never done. An oracle had no time for ghosts. Principal Nizu was, by his very nature, a being of patterns. His mind, supercharged by the high-spec quirk, did not perceive the world as a linear sequence of events but as a vast, interconnected tapestry of cause and effect. He saw the flutter of a butterfly's wings in Brazil and could, with a startling degree of accuracy, calculate the trajectory of the ensuing hurricane in the Caribbean. For him, data was not just information, it was the language of reality itself, and for the past several weeks, a new, fascinating dialect had been introduced into that language. He sat in his office, a room that was simultaneously spacious and cozy, lined with books on everything from quantum physics to classical philosophy. A pristine white porcelain tea set rested on the polished oak of his desk. He held a small cup in his paws, the steam from the high-grade Gyokuro tea warming his white fur. His black, bead-like eyes were not focused on the cup, however. They were fixed on the holographic display shimmering in the air before him. On the display were 2 case files, compiled from every scrap of data UA's formidable intelligence-gathering resources could provide. The first was the Ketsueki Data Solutions hostage crisis. Official report, a lucky power outage and a brilliantly opportunistic takedown by Eraserhead. Nizu's analysis, a statistical improbability bordering on the impossible. The simultaneous failure of 3 independent, shielded power redundancies, the targeted activation of a fire suppression system on a separate network, and the precise disengagement of a fail-secure magnetic lock, all within a 90-second window of tactical opportunity. It was not luck. It was orchestration. The second case was the Nautilus freight incident. Official report, a courageous bust by the heroic Empty Lady, with assistance from Eraserhead, based on an anonymous tip. The media had devoured the story. Hachiman Industries was in freefall, its board of directors resigning in disgrace, its stock worthless. The Hero Public Safety Commission was scrambling to distance itself from the 2 retired officials implicated in the corporate structure. It was a massive, public victory for the heroes. Nizu, however, saw the uglier, more elegant truth. He saw the invisible hand that had rerouted the truck, manipulating port authority schedules and logistics software. He saw the cynical, brilliant choice of actors, the stoic, efficient underground hero and the fame-hungry media darling. One for the capture, one for the fallout. It was a perfectly balanced equation designed for maximum damage to the target and maximum public exposure. A checkmate delivered before the opponent even knew they were playing a game. Someone was out there, a ghost in the world's machine, rewriting reality 1 line of code at a time. This being, this oracle, as Aizawa had grimly codenamed it in his confidential report, was a paradigm shift, an entity of immense power operating completely outside the established frameworks of law and heroism. Most would see a threat. A dangerous, rogue vigilante. A security risk of the highest order. Nizu saw potential, and a delightful, unprecedented challenge. "Your tea is getting cold, Principal." A low, tired voice drawled from the corner of the room. Shota Aizawa leaned against a bookshelf, his arms crossed, his expression as sour as ever. He had been summoned to Nizu's office an hour ago, and had been standing in silence ever since, watching the principal stare into his holographic display with an unnerving, predatory glee. "Patience, Aizawa. Nizu chirped, taking a delicate sip. I am simply admiring a work of art. The precision, the foresight, it's like watching a grandmaster play chess against a world of amateurs. This oracle is not just a hacker. They are a true strategist. They're a menace. Aizawa countered, his voice flat. They're manipulating heroes, interfering with active situations, and operating with zero accountability. We don't know their motives, their identity, or their limits. Today, they take down a trafficking ring. Tomorrow, what if they decide a hero agency is inefficient and leaks its confidential files to the public? What if they decide a city official is corrupt and engineers a public accident? An astute observation, Nizu said, his whiskers twitching. The potential for chaos is indeed immense. Which is precisely why we cannot treat Oracle as a common criminal to be hunted and caged. Such an approach would be illogical. He used Aizawa's own favorite word against him, a playful glint in his eyes. What do you propose, then? Aizawa asked, pushing himself off the bookshelf. We just let this phantom continue to pull our strings. Oh, nothing so passive, Nizu replied, his cheerful tone a stark contrast to the gravity of his words. We are not going to hunt Oracle. We are going to play their game. We are going to set a trap, not to capture, but to communicate. I want to know who they are. I want to understand the mind behind this beautiful, terrifying logic. He turned his full attention to the holographic display, his paws flying across a virtual keyboard that materialized in the air. Oracle's digital signature is impeccable. They leave no tracks, no residue. They are a true ghost. Trying to trace their past actions would be a fool's errand. Therefore, we must make them come to us. He began to construct his trap. It was a thing of digital beauty and malice. He created a new, encrypted server within UA's network, ostensibly for alumni donation tracking. He buried it deep, behind 7 layers of the most advanced firewalls in the country, each one designed by a different security expert, each with a unique digital architecture. He then created a single, deliberately flawed entry point, a backdoor masquerading as a forgotten maintenance port from an older system. It was a flaw so subtle, so elegantly hidden, that only a hacker of the highest caliber would ever find it. Within this server, this digital honeypot, he placed his bait. It was a single, heavily encrypted file. The file was labeled Project Chimera, subject NOMA preliminary analysis. It contained fabricated, but plausible-sounding, data about the creature that had attacked the USJ. It hinted at a vast conspiracy, illegal quark experimentation, and a shadowy mastermind, all things a curious, justice-oriented entity like Oracle would find irresistible. A normal network security skin won't find the vulnerability, Nizu explained, his eyes gleaming. But a deep-level, heuristic probe, the kind of skin someone trying to map our entire network architecture would use, will eventually stumble upon it. It will look like a mistake. A forgotten door. An invitation. And when they step through that door? Aizawa asked. The moment they access the file, a suite of our most aggressive trace programs will activate. They won't be crude, brute force attacks. They will be subtle, parasitic. They will latch onto Oracle's signal, not to block it, but to follow it back to its source. It won't be instantaneous. They will surely have countermeasures. But it will begin a digital game of cat and mouse. And I, my dear Aizawa, am a very, very good cat. Aizawa was silent for a long moment. He understood the principal's logic. To catch a ghost, you had to think like one. But something about Nizu's exhilaration made him uneasy. It felt less like a security operation and more like a scientist about to poke a strange, unknown creature just to see what it would do. And my role in this? He finally asked. You, my friend, are the cheese, Nizu chirped. Oracle has shown a clear preference for you. They trust your efficiency. I will be leaking a piece of minor, unrelated intel to your burner phone in a few days, something about a small-time smuggling ring at the docks. I will encrypt it using a new cipher, one that has a telltale signature connected to our honeypot server. If Oracle is monitoring your communications, as I suspect they are, their analytical software will flag the new encryption. It will pique their curiosity. They will trace the cipher's origin, and it will lead them, indirectly, to our little trap. Now more tea? Aizawa just shook his head and walked out of the office. The world of punching villains suddenly seemed refreshingly simple. Izuku was restless. It had been 4 days since the Nautilus takedown, and the world was still reeling. He had spent the time monitoring the fallout, absorbing the data, and feeling the cold, distant hum of a successful mission. But the silence was beginning to grate on him. The machine needed a new problem to solve. He was currently engaged in what he called digital cartography, mapping the unseen networks of the city. He wasn't looking for anything in particular. He was simply exploring, expanding his domain, charting the flow of data through the city's digital veins. He swept through municipal servers, corporate networks, and public infrastructure controls, his presence as subtle as a change in air pressure. His automated analysis programs were running in the background, constantly scanning for anomalies, for whispers, for the next loose thread. One such program was dedicated entirely to monitoring communications related to a short list of reliable assets. At the top of that list was Eraserhead. A sudden alert pinged softly in the corner of his main monitor. Alert: unknown encryption detected. Source: ephone_izawood.s. Cipher type: asymmetric, polyalphabetic. No known match. Signature anomaly: contains recursive algorithmic marker. Potential origin trace. Izuku's fingers froze over his keyboard. His eyes narrowed. A new encryption on Aizawa's ghost phone. That was interesting. But a recursive algorithmic marker? That was fascinating. It was like a painter signing their work with a specific, unique brushstroke. This cipher wasn't just designed to protect data. It was designed to be noticed. It was a signature. A message. He diverted a significant portion of his processing power to analyzing the cipher. It was sophisticated, layered, and elegant. It was the work of a master, but it had one deliberate characteristic: it was traceable. Not the message itself, but the style of the encryption. It pointed back to a source. A cold thrill, a mix of terror and excitement, shot through him. This wasn't random. This was a call-out. Someone knew he was watching. Someone was waving a flag, trying to get his attention. He traced the algorithmic signature. It was a complex, meandering path, designed to be followed. It led him through a dozen dead-end public servers before finally pointing toward a single, heavily fortified IP address block. Yue High School. Izuku leaned back in his chair, his heart suddenly pounding in his chest. Yue. Of course. The only place with the resources and the sheer intellectual firepower to create something like this. He thought of the school's infamous principal, Nizu. The stories about his high-spec quirk were legendary. If anyone could have seen the pattern, the invisible hand in the recent events, it would be him. They were looking for him. Nizu was looking for him. The boy in him, the one who had once dreamed of walking those hallowed halls, was terrified. He was a quirkless teenager in his bedroom, and he had just attracted the attention of one of the most intelligent beings on the planet. His first instinct was to sever all connections, wipe his recent activity, and go dark for a month. But Oracle was not afraid. Oracle was intrigued. This was a challenge. A game. Nizu had set a piece on the board. To ignore it would be to forfeit. It would be an admission of fear, of inferiority. Oracle did not forfeit. He began to probe the UA network. It was a fortress. A digital mountain range of firewalls, intrusion detection systems, and active countermeasures. It was the most beautiful, most dangerous thing he had ever seen. He spent hours just skirting the perimeter, admiring its architecture, respecting its power. He was an ant crawling on the outside of a bank vault, and then he found it. The flaw. It was in an old, supposedly decommissioned alumni server. A single, forgotten maintenance port that hadn't been properly sealed. It was sloppy. Too sloppy for a system this sophisticated. It reeked of a trap, a honeypot. He smiled. A thin, predatory smile that didn't reach his eyes. It was a test. Nizu had laid out a welcome mat in the middle of a minefield and was waiting to see if he was smart enough to see the mines, and brave enough to step on the mat anyway. Your move, he whispered to the empty room. He wouldn't be so foolish as to enter with his main systems. That would be suicide. Instead, he began to build a puppet. He spun up a series of nested virtual machines, routing his connection through a new, chaotic chain of proxies that bounced from a university in Germany, to a public library in Canada, to a misconfigured smart fridge in Seoul. He created a digital avatar, a temporary phantom with no connection to his true identity, and sent it toward the open door. The puppet slipped through the maintenance port. The UA system didn't react. Just as he expected. He was inside. The server was Spartan. A digital empty room. Except for one thing. A single file, sitting in the center of the directory. Project Chimera, subject NOMU preliminary analysis, the bait. And it was irresistible. The Noma was the single greatest anomaly he had ever encountered. A being with multiple quirks, engineered to fight All Might. It was a question mark that his analytical mind desperately needed to answer. He knew the file was trapped. He knew the moment he accessed it, all the bells and whistles in Nisa's security center would light up. He was ready. His puppet avatar reached out and touched the file. Instantly, he felt the attack. It wasn't a hammer blow. It was the gentle, insidious prick of 1,000 tiny needles. Parasitic trace programs, each one a masterpiece of stealthy code, latched onto his connection. They weren't trying to cut him off. They were trying to follow him home. Trace program detected. Type, parasitic/leech. Threat level, critical. The game had begun. Izuku's fingers became a blur. He was no longer just a boy at a keyboard. He was a conductor orchestrating a symphony of chaos. As Nisa's tracers tried to follow his signal back through the proxy chain, Izuku actively fought them. He didn't just disconnect the proxies. He collapsed them in on themselves, creating digital black holes. He rerouted their traces into endless data loops, forcing the elegant programs to chase their own tails. He fed them corrupted data packets, making his signal appear to originate from the middle of the Pacific Ocean one moment, and the HPSC headquarters the next. It was a frantic, exhilarating dance on the edge of a razor. He was fencing with a master swordsman, parrying and riposting in a flurry of code. He could feel the intelligence on the other side, the sheer processing power of his opponent. Nisa wasn't just using programs. He was actively adapting them, countering Izuku's moves in real time. For a full 10 minutes, the silent, invisible war raged. Izuku was sweating, his heart hammering against his ribs. This was 1,000 times more intense than any physical fight. He was battling a mind. He was also, simultaneously, downloading and decrypting the Noma file. He had partitioned his puppet's processing power, one half fighting the traces, the other half stealing the prize. Finally, the decryption finished. The file's contents flashed onto his screen. It was fascinating, but his instincts screamed that it was incomplete. Fabricated. The data was too neat, the conclusions too simple. It was exactly what someone would create to bait a trap. He had what he came for. It was time to leave his calling card. He had to sever the connection, but he couldn't just run. That would be a loss. He had to leave a message. A sign that he had been here, that he had seen the trap, and that he was not intimidated. With the last of his puppet's resources, as Nisa's trace programs were finally beginning to overwhelm his defenses, Izuku executed his final command. He didn't try to hack the principal's personal terminal, or leave a taunting message on a public screen. That was too crude. He did something far more personal. He found the control system for Nisa's office. Specifically, for the high-end, smart-enabled T-set the principal was so fond of. With his connection collapsing and alarms screaming in his ears, he sent a single, simple command. In Nisa's office, the principal was watching the digital battlefield with an expression of pure, unadulterated joy. Incredible! He squeaked, his paws a blur over his holographic keyboard. Their defensive maneuvers are fluid, adaptive. They're not using pre-programmed counter-scripts, they're improvising. This is wonderful! Aizawa, who had been called back in to observe, just watched with a deepening sense of dread. Are you tracing them? We are. We are. Nisa chirped. They are routing through an astonishingly complex proxy chain, but they can't hide forever. We have them. Their signal is degrading. Another minute, and we'll have a lock on their general vicinity. A city block, perhaps even a specific building. The holographic map of Mizudafu was rapidly narrowing down, zeroing in on a residential district a few miles from the UA campus. And then two things happened at once. First, Oracle's signal vanished. It didn't just disconnect. It shattered into a million pieces of junk data, a digital smokescreen that sent the trace programs haywire. The map on the screen dissolved into static. The ghost was gone. Second, the pristine white teapot on Nisa's desk began to vibrate. With a soft whir, its automated pouring arm lifted, tilted, and poured the principal's freshly brewed, perfectly heated Gyokuro tea directly into the small pot containing the potted bonsai tree next to it. The room fell silent. Aizawa stared at the drowned plant. Nisa stared at his empty teacup. The principal's joyful expression slowly faded, replaced by something else. A look of profound, absolute shock. Then he began to laugh. It wasn't his usual cheerful chirp. It was a deep, rolling, slightly unhinged laugh of pure delight and disbelief. He laughed until tears streamed from his beady eyes, his small body shaking. He didn't just steal the data. Nisa gasped, wiping a tear from his fur. He saw the trap, walked into it, took the bait, won the fight, and then he poured out my tea. He finally collected himself, his eyes gleaming with a manic fire that genuinely scared Aizawa. He looked at his ruined bonsai, then at the blank holographic screen. "This is no mere vigilante, Aizawa," he said, his voice filled with a newfound respect. "This is a worthy opponent. A rival." He turned back to his console and, with a few keystrokes, accessed his own private, ultra-secure server. He typed a single message into a blank text file, leaving it open on his screen. Then, with a flick of his paw, he took a screenshot. He opened a new program, one that broadcasted an encrypted, anonymous message to a public data stream used by meteorologists, a channel so obscure and mundane no one would ever think to look at it, but someone with the ability to monitor everything might. He attached the screenshot to the broadcast. He leaned back, a wide, toothy grin spreading across his face. Izuku's system was a wreck. He had to perform a hard reboot of 2 of his servers, and his proxy network was in tatters. It would take him days to rebuild. He had pushed his skills and his hardware to their absolute limit. He felt exhausted, drained, but vibrantly, terrifyingly alive. He had won. He had faced the principal of UA in a digital duel, and had walked away with the prize. The Noma data was fake, he was sure of it, but that didn't matter. The act itself was the victory. As his system slowly came back online, a passive alert program flagged an unusual data packet on a weather satellite channel. On instinct, he isolated and decrypted it. It was an image file. A screenshot. It showed a computer screen, a simple black background with white text. It was a message, "Your move." Below the text was a picture. A simple, line art drawing of a white mouse, a crown perched jauntily on its head, holding a teacup. Izuku stared at the image. A slow smile spread across his face. It was not the cold, grim smile of Oracle. It was the genuine, excited smile of Izuku Midoriya, the boy who loved a good, complex game. Nisa wasn't just hunting him. He was inviting him to play. The watchers were being watched, and the game had just become infinitely more interesting. He saved the image to his desktop and, using a simple editing program, drew a response. It was a silhouette of a hooded figure, barely visible in the shadows, holding a single chess piece, a pawn. He broadcasted back on the same channel, a silent reply to his new rival. The message was clear. "I know you see me as just a pawn in your game. But pawns can become queens." The war in the shadows had a new player. And Izuku couldn't wait for his next move. The digital duel with Nisa left Izuku changed. The initial terror of being discovered had sublimated into a high-octane state of hyper-awareness. He was no longer just a ghost hiding in the shadows. He was a player in a grand, silent game against the master. This new reality forced him to be sharper, faster, and more paranoid than ever before. He spent a full week reinforcing his fortress, overhauling his security, and weaving new, more complex webs of misdirection throughout the internet. He was a spider, and his web now spanned the globe. But fortification was defense. And Oracle's purpose was to attack. During his infiltration of the Nautilus freight servers, he had stumbled upon more than just manifests of human cargo. In the company's encrypted accounting logs, buried under layers of dummy corporations and offshore accounts, he had found a recurring payment, a monthly transfer of a significant sum, disguised as a public relations and security consultation fee, made out to a company called Golden Age Solutions. The name meant nothing. The company was a shell, existing only as a mailing address and a bank account. But the account holder was not a ghost. With some deep-level financial tracing, the kind that would have sent a team of government auditors into a month-long coma, Izuku found the name attached to the final transactions. It was a name he recognized. A name the whole country recognized. Takamura Kenji. To the public, he was Captain Celebrity, the 23-ranked pro-hero in Japan. An American hero who had transferred to Japan a few years ago. He had a flashy quirk called Flight and Flare, which allowed him to fly and generate dazzling, harmless bursts of light. He was handsome, charismatic, and had an approval rating that hovered in the high 90s. He specialized in nonviolent resolutions, saving cats from trees, and endorsing everything from soft drinks to hair gel. He was the perfect corporate hero, marketable, safe, and utterly beloved. To Izuku, he was a variable in a corrupt equation. Captain Celebrity was taking money from Hachiman Industries, the parent company of the Nautilus trafficking ring. It was a kickback. A bribe. But for what? The pieces didn't fit. Celebrity wasn't a powerhouse who could intimidate law enforcement, nor was he an underground hero who could make investigations disappear. He was a glorified billboard. Izuku dug deeper. He cross-referenced Celebrity's patrol schedules and public appearances with the operational timelines of smaller, independent hero agencies over the past 2 years. A new, sickening pattern emerged. Whenever a small but promising hero agency started gaining traction in a territory where Hachiman Industries had significant real estate or commercial interests, Captain Celebrity would suddenly become very active in that area. He wouldn't fight villains. He would simply appear. He'd host a charity event. He'd give a speech at a local school. He'd perform a series of flashy, low-risk rescues that would dominate the local news cycle. For a week or two, he would completely monopolize the public's attention. The smaller agency, struggling for recognition and resources, would be rendered invisible. Their response times would look slow compared to the ever-present Celebrity. Their successes would go unreported. Public funding would dry up. Contracts would be lost. Within a few months, the agency would inevitably fold or be forced to relocate. Then, a new, Hachiman-backed hero security firm would conveniently open up in the territory, securing lucrative private security contracts for the very properties Hachiman owned. It wasn't illegal. It was just ruthless, predatory capitalism, using a beloved hero as a weapon. Captain Celebrity wasn't being paid for what he did, but for what he was, an attention black hole. He was a saboteur, destroying the careers of honest, hard-working heroes not with a punch, but with a smile and a camera flash. The cold, analytical part of Izuku, the Oracle persona, saw it as a systemic weakness to be exploited and purged. But the boy who had once filled notebooks with heartfelt analysis of even the most obscure heroes felt a hot, venomous rage. This was a betrayal of everything a hero was supposed to be. This was the rot, the festering sickness at the heart of the society he was trying to save. Street-level thugs and human traffickers were symptoms. Men like Captain Celebrity were the disease, and Oracle was the cure. This takedown couldn't be like the Nautilus incident. There were no hostages to save, no ticking clock. A quiet arrest would never happen. Celebrity was too popular, his connections too strong. A simple leak of financial data could be explained away as a smear campaign by a rival. No, this had to be a public execution, a slow, methodical dissection of a hero's reputation, performed in the open for the entire world to see. He would not just expose Captain Celebrity. He would make the public his weapon. Phase 1, the seed of doubt. Izuku began by creating a new online persona. He didn't use a shady, anonymous handle. He crafted a believable identity. Tanaka-san, a middle-aged, recently laid-off accountant with a passion for justice and a knack for numbers. He created social media profiles, backdated them with posts about his mundane life, his love for fishing, his daughter's piano recitals. He was painstakingly, boringly real. As Tanaka, he started a blog. It wasn't a hero gossip site. It was a dry, fiscally focused blog called Heroics by the Numbers. His first few posts were insightful but uncontroversial analyses of the economic impact of hero agencies on local communities. He built a small but respectable following of finance nerds and policy wonks. Then he posted, "The Celebrity Effect, an Economic Anomaly." The post was a masterpiece of understatement. It didn't accuse Captain Celebrity of anything. It simply presented the data. It showed, with clear, easy-to-read charts, the statistical correlation between Captain Celebrity's public appearances and the financial collapse of small hero agencies in the same area. It framed the entire phenomenon as a curious economic question. Is Captain Celebrity's overwhelming popularity inadvertently creating hero deserts? The article mused. Is his brand so powerful that it creates an environment where smaller, community-focused heroes simply cannot compete? This is not a critique of the hero himself, but a question about the structure of our hero-based economy. The article was calm, rational, and devastating. It didn't throw a bomb, it planted a seed. A tiny, insidious seed of doubt. The post began to circulate. It was picked up by a few larger financial news aggregators. The comments section filled with debate. Some defended Celebrity, calling it a coincidence. Others, former supporters of the now-defunct agencies, confirmed the pattern. For the first time, a public conversation was happening that framed Captain Celebrity not as a savior, but as a problem. Phase 2, fanning the flames. With the conversation started, Izuku moved to his next phase. He needed to add a layer of tangible suspicion. He had, during his deep dive, acquired hours of security footage from restaurants, hotel lobbies, and private parking garages where Captain Celebrity's civilian identity, Takamura Kenji, had met with executives from Hachiman Industries. The meetings themselves were not incriminating. They could be explained as philanthropic discussions or business proposals. But Izuku didn't release the full footage. He selected a single, 10-second, silent clip. It showed Takamura in a high-end restaurant, shaking hands with a known Hachiman executive. The lighting was low, the atmosphere conspiratorial. In the clip, the executive slides a thick, unmarked envelope across the table. In reality, the envelope contained architectural plans for a new children's hospital wing that Hachiman was funding, a project that would later be used for tax write-offs and PR. But out of context, it looked exactly like a payoff. Izuku didn't leak the clip to the mainstream news. That would be too aggressive, too easy for Celebrity's PR team to refute. Instead, he sent it to the digital equivalent of a back-alley gossip, a popular but notoriously sleazy hero gossip blog called Hero Leaks. The site was known for its sensationalism and morally dubious sources. He sent the clip from a disposable email with a single line, "Maybe ask Captain Celebrity what was in the envelope." As he predicted, HeroLeaks ran the story with a screaming, sensational headline, "Captain Celebrity caught taking mystery payoff from shady exec?" Watch the shocking video. The reaction was immediate and polarized. Celebrity's legion of fans decried it as a cheap smear from an unreliable source. His new detractors, primed by the Heroics by the Numbers blog, saw it as confirmation of their suspicions. The story was too trashy for the mainstream media to touch directly, but they could report on the controversy itself. News segments ran with titles like, "Beloved hero Captain Celebrity embroiled in online smear campaign." His PR team issued a swift, forceful denial. Captain Celebrity was discussing a charitable donation for a new hospital wing. This malicious editing of a private moment is a new low, even for the gutter press. They were telling the truth. And that was the beauty of Izuku's plan. By using an unreliable source, he had forced Celebrity's team into a defensive crouch. They were now in the position of having to explain themselves, to deny, to react. They had lost control of the narrative. The public had now heard two things linked together, Captain Celebrity and payoff. The seed of doubt had begun to sprout. Phase 3, the coup de grace. The controversy simmered for a week. Captain Celebrity's approval ratings took a minor, but noticeable, dip for the first time in his career. His PR team was working overtime. They scheduled a major press conference and a series of high-profile, televised rescues to remind the public of who he was. This was the moment Izuku had been waiting for. The hero's response was predictable. An oracle preyed on predictability. He had one last piece of ammunition. The most damning piece of all. It was an audio file, recovered from the deleted data of a burner phone used by one of the Hachiman executives. The executive, arrogant and careless, had recorded a call with Takamura to use as leverage if the hero ever got greedy. The quality was poor, full of static, but the words were clear. Takamura's voice. Look, the pressure is getting to be too much. This new agency, Rising Sun Heroics, they're good. They have a local kid with a powerful barrier quirk. The community loves them. I can't just outshine them. They're actually effective. Executive's voice. I'm not paying you to be effective, Takamura. I'm paying you to be famous. Drown them. Host a Hero Appreciation Day. Kiss some babies. Do one of your light shows. I don't care. Just make sure that by the time we're ready to break ground on our new mall, Rising Sun Heroics is a memory. Or your next payment becomes a memory. This was the smoking gun. The undeniable proof. But Izuku knew that if he released it now, it would just be another log on the fire of the current news cycle. It had to land with the force of a nuclear bomb. It needed the biggest possible stage, and Captain Celebrity's PR team was building that stage for him. The press conference was a major event, broadcast live on every major network. Captain Celebrity stood at a podium, a backdrop of his own smiling face behind him. He looked poised, heroic, and righteously indignant. My friends, my supporters, he began, his voice resonating with practiced sincerity. In recent weeks, a campaign of lies and innuendo has been waged against me. My character has been defamed, my work, my life's dedication to protecting you, has been called into question by shadowy figures hiding behind keyboards. He was brilliant. He was turning himself into the victim, the noble hero besieged by faceless cowards. The tide of public opinion was already starting to turn back in his favor. In his dark room, Izuku watched, his face impassive. His fingers rested on his keyboard. He had already breached the broadcast network's live feed server. It was a complex hack, requiring him to piggyback on the signal of a live weather graphic insertion, but he was in. He had a 5-second window where he could override the primary audio-video feed. Celebrity continued, his voice swelling with emotion. I have only ever acted with the purest of intentions. My only goal has ever been to serve the people of Japan. To anyone who would doubt that, I say this. He paused for dramatic effect, ready to deliver his soaring, reputation-saving final line. In that moment of perfect silence, Izuku acted. He didn't override the video. He left the image of the hero's earnest, handsome face on every screen in the country. He only overrode the audio. For 5 seconds, every television, every streaming device, every public video screen in Japan was filled with the scratchy, damning audio from the burner phone. I'm not paying you to be effective, Takamura. I'm paying you to be famous. Drown them. The audio cut out as abruptly as it had begun. The broadcast returned to the press conference. Captain Celebrity's mouth was open, but no sound was coming out. His face, projected on a 100-foot screen behind him, had gone from heroic to horrified. The color drained from his cheeks. His eyes were wide with the sheer, animal panic of a creature that has just realized the trap has sprung. The room of reporters was silent for a single, stunned heartbeat. Then chaos erupted. Shouts, questions, the frantic clicking of 1,000 cameras. The broadcast cut to a bewildered-looking news anchor. We seem to be experiencing some technical difficulties. We apologize for that audio interference. But it was too late. The damage was done. The rot had been exposed. In the aftermath, the fall was swift and brutal. Audiogate, as the media dubbed it, was an unmitigated disaster from which Captain Celebrity could not recover. The HPSC, which had previously ignored the whispers, could not ignore a confession broadcast on national television. They launched an immediate, high-priority investigation. The Hachiman executive was arrested, and in a bid for a lighter sentence, he gave up everything and everyone. The Heroics by the Numbers blog posted its final entry, revealing that the mystery envelope from the gossip site video did, in fact, contain the hospital plans. This final, verifiable truth bomb made the whole conspiracy feel more real, more insidious. It showed that Celebrity was not just corrupt, but also a liar who had hidden behind a genuine act of charity. Captain Celebrity was suspended, then stripped of his hero license. His endorsement deals vanished overnight. His face was scrubbed from billboards and soft drink cans. He became a pariah. The public, feeling betrayed and foolish, turned on him with a vengeance. The hero they had loved was a fraud, and there is no scorn like that of a disillusioned fan. The final image the public had of him was not of him flying through the sky, but of him being escorted from his penthouse apartment by HPSC investigators, his face hidden under a jacket, a broken, pathetic man. From his command center, Izuku watched it all unfold with a grim, chilling sense of finality. He had not laid a single hand on the man, yet he had utterly destroyed him. He had wielded public opinion like a scalpel, cutting away the cancerous tissue from the hero world. He opened the case file on his screen. Case 049, Corruption/Sabotage Captain Celebrity. Resolution successful. Target neutralized. Reputation destroyed. Hero license revoked. He typed the final line, his fingers moving with methodical precision. But as he went to close the file, he hesitated. He felt nothing. Not the grim satisfaction of the Nautilus case, not the thrill of his duel with Nizu. Just a profound, echoing emptiness. He had just ended a man's life. Not his physical life, but everything he had built, everything he was. And even though Celebrity was corrupt, even though he deserved it, the sheer, absolute power Izuku had wielded left a bitter taste in his mouth. He had acted as judge, jury, and executioner, all from the safety of his darkened room. The detachment was what scared him. It was too clean. Too easy. He looked at his hands, pale in the glow of the monitors. They were the hands of a teenager. They shouldn't be capable of this. A small, quiet voice, one he hadn't heard in a long time, the voice of the boy who wanted to save people with a smile, whispered in the back of his mind. Is this saving people? He forcefully pushed the thought away. It was a weakness. A bug in the system. He was fixing a broken world. This was a necessary, if unpleasant, part of that process. He closed the file. His system pinged. It was an alert from the UE network. He tensed, his exhaustion vanishing, replaced by instant focus. It wasn't an attack. It was the same public, anonymous weather data stream Nizu had used before. A new image file. He decrypted it. It was another simple line drawing. This one showed a king chess piece, toppled over, its crown cracked. Beneath it was a single word, impressive. Izuku stared at the message from his rival. Nizu had watched the entire thing. He had seen Izuku's masterful manipulation of the media and the public. And he was impressed. A cold knot formed in Izuku's stomach. Nizu's approval was more terrifying than his anger. It meant the principal saw him not as a hero or a villain, but as a peer, a fellow player who understood that sometimes, pieces had to be sacrificed for the good of the game. He was being drawn deeper into a world of gray morality, a world he had created for himself. And he was starting to worry that he might not be able to find his way back. He shut down the monitor, plunging the room into darkness. But he could still see the image of the fallen king, burned onto the back of his eyelids. The weight of the crown he had just toppled felt heavier than any physical object. And he had a chilling premonition that it wouldn't be the last one he would be forced to make fall.